Morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our 30-minute One Medical Group bite-sized breakfast webinar. Delighted to be joined by a new panel this week, and our topic is workforce development, so modelling, redesign and talent management of the PCN workforce. Every 3 weeks we have a new topic, and we're joined by new panel members, and the aims and objectives of the webinars are to bring you some top tips and tools and practical guidance that you can use back with your own practices and PCN teams. My name's Caroline. I'm the National Collaboration Director for One Medical Group. So we are a provider of primary care at scale, and we've been supporting primary care networks across the country for the last couple of years to help them develop, start to form relationships, and then to help them in delivering the primary care network desk. I'm going to let our panel introduce themselves. So Will, I'm going to come to you first of all.
Hi, so I'm Will Dawson. I'm a GP by background and the Chief Executive Officer of One Medical Group. So I've worked with One Medical Group for the last 6 years as a GP, and then been a part of the leadership team as the Chief Medical Officer for the last 3 years, before taking the role of Chief Executive in April.
Brilliant, thanks Will. Trish, coming to you next.
Hello everybody, my name is Trish Atkinson. I work in Cheshire and Merseyside as the Training Hub Lead, along with my colleague Katie Power, who's not here today. My background is general practice. I was a business manager for many years, and then more recently I've moved into the remit of education and training. Prior to that I did work for ASDA for many years and had some experience working in sort of the people agenda there as well.
That's great, thanks Trish. And Becca.
Morning everybody, I'm an associate for One Medical, background in nursing, adult, children's and district nursing. So I've been around the block, been in and out of GP practices for many years and in primary care and community services. My last formal role before I started working for myself was as a chief exec of a hospice, and it was here I learned an awful lot about workforce planning and development. So hoping I can shed a little light and help a few of your questions today, answer a few of your questions today around this area. So good to be with you.
That's brilliant. Thanks, panel. Just the background to today's webinar. So primary care networks are obviously working to submit their 4-year workforce plan at the end of this month. So I expect many of you watching will already have started to develop that plan. Others may have a broad outline, but it might be something that you're wanting to revisit after the winter period. So we're hoping that we can give you some tips and ideas that can help form and evolve your workforce plan. We've been working with primary care networks across Cheshire and Merseyside most recently to help them in developing a framework to shape their plan. So before we start, I'm going to ask Becca very, very quickly to talk you through the 6-step cycle for workforce planning. We're going to send you some slides out after the webinar that will go into this in a little bit more detail. But for those of you that may still be at the beginning of that workforce planning journey, I just thought it might be helpful for Becca just to give you a quick run through the cycle. So over to you, Becca.
Thanks, Caroline. So there are many models of workforce planning, but we've chosen a simple 6-step one to break it down because this is a process that happens over a number of years. So the first part of the process, which you've already been doing, is profiling your current workforce, which is really important. So know who you've got, what their skills are and what they can do, who's coming up to retirement, where you've got sickness, etc. So that's the first step of the cycle. You then start to look around your needs. So what are the challenges that you've got ahead of you? What's going to happen in the future? Have you got the workforce you want you need in order to deliver those challenges? So think about that. The next step of the cycle is what your gaps are. So based on what your challenges, needs are in your current workforce, what are the gaps you've got to bridge over the next few years to have the workforce that you need to be able to deliver your services? The next step is to think about the strategies that are going to help you fill those gaps. So what are you going to do around recruitment and retention, succession planning, leadership development, bringing students in, maybe having internships in your area, looking at volunteers and their use. How are you going to develop some strategies? The next step, step 5, is how you're going to action those strategies. So you need to have clear action planning processes in place that are robust. And the final step of the cycle is to check that things are going well. So you need to have a way of monitoring and evaluating the services that you're delivering and making sure that the roles that you've got and the people that are in them are fit for purpose and that you're developing your workforce in the right way.
Thanks, Becca.
And that's it.
And I know that's a real whistle-stop tour of kind of a cycle that PCNs can go on around workforce planning. We've been working with a lot of PCNs who have really taken this project and gripped it, and practice managers and each practice have started to develop their own practice workforce plan, which has then fed into a PCN plan. But that brings me back to the fundamental question of why are we investing so much time in this, and why are we recommending that PCNs really focus on this workforce planning opportunity? Why is it important to PCNs? So Will, I'm going to come to you first of all to give your view from as Chief Exec of One Medical Group. So why should PCNs take this process really seriously?
Yeah, no, and I think that's a good question. I think, and Becca's outlined some of the reasons already. I think so. As we look forward of what PCNs need to deliver and the challenges that come with that, and what healthcare moving forward and primary care moving forward looks like, I think we know that things are going to change. We know things at workforce is going to be different. So we can't just assume that what we've done before and the workforce that we've had before and the way that we've done things before is going to be the same. And we know actually it's going to be very different because we're being asked to do more. We're going to be asked to do different and different challenges. So I think, you know, that first point of really understanding what those challenges are is the key to being able to understand how your workforce is going to look moving forward. And I think there's a real opportunity to plan workforce for the needs of the collective populations throughout PCNs in a way that we've never done before as individual practices, and a way that really delivers. So whether you as a practice or PCN are wanting to focus on resilience of your own workforce, or if you're looking at how you can better deliver care to certain patient groups, that all starts with really understanding what those challenges are and where the gaps might be, looking at those challenges. I think data, and we do a lot within One Medical Group around understanding data, and there's often some data fatigue because we have so much, but it's the right kind of data. So really understanding where the challenges are and what the needs of the population are. So we do a lot of work with population health data, which really informs the forming and recruitment of our clinical workforce and our models, which in a really sort of game-changing way with regards to the importance of planning. So we see how actually the understanding what the patient cohort and the patient population's needs are over the next 5 to 10 years is key to understanding how you then plan your workforce. Because the danger is, if we don't do any planning, if you don't look ahead, if you don't look at what the challenges are, not just now but in the future, you risk the risk is always that we recruit on what we think we know, on what we've seen in the past, and actually with no real evidence. So that's what's needed moving forward. And we do that a lot of the time. Certainly in my experience within general practices, we're keen to recruit and put gaps in it, and we don't really set ourselves a marker on what success looks like. And I think that's where planning and data really are important for PCNs as well, is, you know, setting what do we want to achieve by this recruitment and what do we want to achieve moving forward before we do anything is really key, because otherwise how will you know what success looks like? How will you know if you've done it?
Yeah, I can see the rest of the panel nodding there. So lots of agreements going on. For those of you that are watching live, if you want to submit any questions to the panel, or if there's anything that Will said or any of the other panelists say that you want to pick up on or you want us to explore a little bit more on, then please use the questions box on your toolbar, and we can go through some of those questions at the end. Trish, coming to you next, from a training hub perspective, why is it important that PCNs invest this time into workforce planning?
Well, I'd agree fully with what Will said. I think that, you know, we think about the volume of change that we're facing at the moment in primary care. It's quite unprecedented, really. And not only with COVID, but prior to that, with the formation of the primary care networks and the development of integrated care partnerships. And, you know, we just look at the long-term plan and how it's talking about shifting services and care into primary care and community care. And I think it presents a great opportunity for looking at new ways of doing things. But from my perspective, I think that the reason why workforce planning is so important is that sometimes it's a bit of an afterthought. We think about service delivery first, but we don't think about the workforce at the same time. And it's really key that we do, because we know that change can't happen unless the workforce are on board, unless, like Will said, we've identified what are those roles that are required. And I think that sometimes we need to look at it from a competency perspective rather than necessarily a role perspective, because we need to think about, when we design those services, what is it that we actually are going to need in order to deliver them? And then that allows us to think about the roles and what different types of roles can do. So obviously the new additional roles reimbursement scheme has been fantastic for primary care. I wish there'd been a little bit more time for PCNs to mature, in all honesty, so that they could really work up perhaps a little bit more around that service delivery and what might change to try and embed those roles going forward. From a learning and development perspective, going back again to agree fully with what Will says, I think there's something really important about gathering your data. And we've just undertook an exercise across Cheshire, trying to understand the learning and development posts that exist currently across our practices, ranging from practices that support work experience right through to those that support at fellowship level. Because I think unless you can understand it within your primary care network what roles you are supporting, and actually you probably need to be supporting some of every type of role across your network, whether that be nursing, physician associates, students, GP registrars coming through. That's going to be what's required in order to feed your future pipeline. So one of my tips would be to do a bit of a scoping exercise within your primary care networks to really understand what is it that you support in terms of learning and development posts.
Thanks, Trish. Becca, coming to you next. So I know you've done lots of work now with primary care networks through some of the workshops that we've been delivering together. So I know you come at this from a talent management position, having done lots of work with the Leadership Academy across the country as well. So what's the significance and importance for PCNs when it comes to workforce planning?
Well, I think at the moment it's a really exciting time. We have money in primary care at long last for the first time, but it has come with a fast agenda. This happened in community services a few years back. It keeps happening in other areas as well. So the thing is with planning, you've got to have time to think, and I know that you're all really busy, but think about what it is you need, and that's what planning is. So you need to really think about where are we going and what do we need in order to get there. We've had COVID thrust upon us. That was unexpected. You've learned new ways of working already at huge speed in primary care and in other areas of healthcare delivery and social care. So you need to carry on now with that learning. And there may be things from COVID that you want to make sure are in place over the next 4 years, so that will come into your workforce planning. What you're really trying to do is to underpin what you're doing in your practices and across your new network. I mean, PCNs are new organisations, so you've got time to think through and plan this, but you need a workforce, not only in practices, but across the wider area, that's the right size, with the right attitudes and behaviours. That's where leadership development comes in, with the right values, understanding your local needs, which you do, you're so well placed in it, with the right skills to deliver what you do, and to work with the other community and other health and social care organisations and third sector who are already delivering in this area some of the services you're developing. So you need to know your partners, need to know who you're going to join forces with, and how you're going to work in a more integrated way, which is very new in primary care, because you've been a number of smaller units and now you're coming together and becoming bigger and bigger. And so someone's always done this before, so you need to learn from them and not worry about your larger agenda. Break it into bite-sized chunks. Like I said, it's a stage process over a number of years. It's maybe the first time you've been thrusted in quite this way and asked for so much information around workforce development, but this will put you in a good place for the future. Break it into short term and long term, and think about what you're trying to do to capture what you need in the way of information to have a workforce that can perform as you want to. This is so important for you. Across the whole area, and you will benefit from this. Although it may feel a very bureaucratic process initially, you'll really benefit from having not only the thinking time and the planning, but a written plan that you're working towards with objectives and goals across the area and working with those partners. So this is a very exciting time, and also really important that your own workforce is not undervalued. You've got the R roles coming in, you've got your additional roles coming in, and that's great. And you can look at those and bring them into the workforce. Who have you already got that might want to take on one of those roles and develop? How do you make sure your workforce is future fit? I talked about attitudes and behaviours and values. You've got a number of small organisations with different cultures coming together under one primary care network. How are you going to help that workforce to understand each other, not only each other's roles in your practice as you bring new roles in, make sure your patients understand what you're doing, your local population, but this is really important for you and for your future, because this will really, really bring together a wider service arena that patients can access locally, and people haven't got to then keep travelling off to other places to get some of the services that should really be on their doorstep. So
Becca,
hopefully this is an exciting time for you and your workforce can be developed.
I just want to pick you up on that, because you've led really neatly onto a question that we've already had submitted prior to the webinar today, which is around PCNs are really struggling to integrate those new ARRS roles into their existing teams. So a lot of PCNs have employed kind of pan-PCN staff that are going to work across the practices, maybe spending a day a week in each practice. And that individual can feel almost homeless in a way, like they don't belong with any one particular team. So I'm going to come to our panel, each individually, on their views on this. And Will, I know at One Medical Group, because we have a number of practices across a geography in Leeds, for example, that actually pan practice staff have been part of our workforce model. So how did One Medical Group integrate those individuals into the teams?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and again, we've not always got it right. I think that's really important to say. And we work within PCNs and currently haven't always got it right either. And I think there is always a danger with these new roles coming in and a lot of funding attached to it. That there's quite a large degree of short-termism and sort of let's just get them in and work out what we're going to do later. And I know of PCNs who are on their second round of recruitment for pharmacists because the first time they rushed it and it was wrong, and the second time they didn't know what they were doing and it was wrong. So I think that around how you integrate it goes back to, if we're talking around, what's key to a successful multidisciplinary team, then it is that sense of team. It's understanding that you're bringing people in who need to be part of a team and not just a function, or not just almost a kind of a resource. And I think that it's very tempting to say, well, we've got this money, we're going to bring them in, they'll do something for us. But actually what you need to be seeing, and what we try to see, is actually, well, these are a team, and it goes back to what is the need, what is the need, where are they going to fit, how are they going to work with us, how are we going to work together, how does it balance what we do fundamentally, and how does that benefit the patient, and how are we going to work together in the care of a patient? Because remembering, these roles are about making care better, but not taking some, and it's a difficult one, because I think primary care is in a very difficult place around resilience and around the workload, and the temptation is, well, we'll recruit someone because they'll take a workload off of us, but then the danger is that they don't become siloed into that sort of role, and they're actually seen as part of the team and actually have a responsibility, because most of us and most people want to work in primary care because they want to work as part of the team, and they want to work in a way that collectively cares for patients. So I think that kind of team continuity and how you bring people together to sort of look at how you do deliver multidisciplinary care as a team is really important. And if you don't do that, if you just bring people in and say, okay, you're going to see these X amount of patients and we'll see kind of a practice meeting, it rarely works, because you're not changing the system, you're not changing your structure to make a space for these people, and you're not really understanding whether or not it was needed in the first place. So again, I think what you said, Becca, and what you said, Trish, as well, around really understanding why you're bringing these people in and what are they going to do and what benefit are we going to see as part of the team, it's really important. And again, really being tempted to not see these R's roles as a way to save money, because I think, or a way to kind of prop up other parts of recruitment that's not working. So we need to think, much more differently. These roles are not just some sort of hybrid model of existing workforce gaps. I think we kind of need to see a whole new model that comes with that. And then also kind of guard against sort of short-termism and just saying, well, we just need to do it and we'll work it out, sort of. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say it's chicken and egg at the moment, which is a bit bizarre, but you know, you can't just get people in and then work out what they're going to do. You do need to do that preparation first. So I think it's rather than looking, it's about looking to deliver things quickly over a long period of time. So, but accepting it is not a quick kind of, you know, we'll be sorted by in a month's time. It is, as Becca says, going to take years to get to a workforce that delivers what we want it to.
Thanks, Will. Thank you. So yeah, really understanding what you want the role to deliver, identifying some clear metrics and a job plan. Trish, as we bring new members of the MDT in, things like clinical supervision, support, training, peer networks are all really important as well. So I'm keen to get your view on that and how the training hubs can potentially help PCNs.
Yeah, the training hubs roles really expanded in this year. Our core function now is to support primary care networks and primary and community care networks as well, actually. So thinking outside the box with regards to what education and training opportunities are available across, you know, your care communities, not just within primary care. Your training hubs will have access. Certainly there's an STP level training hub now in every area, and they will have some influence and certainly contacts and communication with NHS England, Health Education England. They're well positioned to bid for additional funding to develop new roles. We're getting a lot of asks at the moment from primary care networks to look at sort of internship, preceptorship programs for these new roles that have been brought in. So we're trying to think about how do we do that. There is the new fellowship program for all newly qualified doctors and nurses, which is a fantastic commitment. It's in the GP contract. So that's available to every single newly qualified GP and nurse coming into general practice. They just need to have a substantive contract. So that's great. And I think we need to build on that to create a similar sort of program for physicians associates, paramedics, first contact practitioners, and really start to support that workforce, because we know the evidence suggests that these new roles, retention of them is really tricky because of the fact that there isn't necessarily the wraparound training and education that they need, but also, I come to your point, Caroline and Will, it's about that role definition without a shadow of a doubt and understanding where they fit. And just to pick up one other thing that I wanted to mention, because I know Becca touched on this as well, is for me, the key to success for any team is having a clear shared vision. And I would encourage any primary care network to go back and make sure that you've got a shared vision, that you're clear of it. And beneath that, you have got some sort of values and behaviours that you agree to. And I think that when you come across challenges and perhaps within primary care networks, which might happen, if you do have a set of values that you sort of can go back to and ask yourselves, actually, are we living to our values here? It really can help work through those challenges and issues. And it also will help you with workforce planning as well, because if you live to your values, you inevitably will think about how you embed your workforce when you bring them in.
Yeah. Brilliant. No, really good points. Thanks, Trish. And we've had some comments coming in as well saying that in different parts of the country, preceptorship support programs are already available for some of those roles. So again, if you haven't already tapped into your primary care or your training hub, please go and speak to them, because the chances are they'll be responding to your local needs, like Trish does with her team across Cheshire. Becca, I want to talk to you from a culture perspective, because I know with the work that you've been doing nationally with PCNs and practices, how you embed these pan PCN roles into the 5 or 6 or 10 different cultures within practices, that can be a challenge. So what's your view and tips on that?
Well, I think Will and Trish have already touched upon it, as have you. First of all, you've got to have clear job descriptions and role descriptions, person specs that everybody agrees to and everyone understands, and that patients understand, and their carers who's in those roles and what those roles look like, because that then helps the different practices to understand what those roles are coming in to do. But I think it's really important, communicate at the moment like you've never communicated before, because each practice is different, and if you can get some rotation or some chance to for some of your teams to work across different practices for one reason or another. I've done development programs and leadership programs where we've had administration roles starting to rotate through practices in that smaller area, 3 practices, and it works very well to start helping people understand culture. Know who the people are in your organisation who are really good at communicating and who like to reach out and understand who are your curious staff, because that really helps. And obviously those people coming into new roles need the chance to understand how each practice works, its different ways of working, because we know everybody does things slightly differently, but they need a person in each practice they can go to. Really important. So culturally, they've got someone who they can connect to and say, is this how you do things here? Can you explain things to me? They do need mentorship outside of the organisation, or somebody who's in a role outside of the practices, but somebody in each practice, as I've said. And I think also you've got to develop your own team as leaders, so that everybody can understand responsibility, empowerment, and can help people. We're all one bigger team when it comes down to it, and that's what we're trying to develop. So for people to understand each other's cultures, we've got to be able to reach out, we've got to have honesty, transparency, we've got to trust like we've never trusted before, and maybe in the past, other practices in the area may have been seen as, well, we don't know if we want to tell them what we're doing. Now is the time you have to start talking about what you're all doing together, and this can only be a good thing, but it will help those coming in to understand how the different practices work if people are able to come to the table and meet together and talk. So think about rotational roles, think about volunteering roles. Again, I know I've mentioned it, but volunteers can work across different cultures, and they will have done for years. The charitable sector is the most adaptable and flexible sector I've ever worked in healthcare delivery and social care delivery. So learn from other people and what they've done as well. This has all happened. This isn't new, what you're going through. It has, I say, it happened in community services. It's happened in acute services as well, with re-engineering and looking at cross-functional working. So don't start from the beginning. Learn from what others have done, and other people have had to cross these cultural barriers before, and you'll do this. But it will be an interesting time. So stay curious, know people, be transparent.
And I think, we've seen PCNs that have used health and wellbeing coaches, for example, to lead on volunteer recruitment for a PCN, or lead on PPG, expert patient program recruitment. So some of those ARRS roles can be used really creatively. Last question, and you've got 30 seconds each, panel, so sorry to cut you or sell you short potentially here. I know Trish is probably going to want a lot longer than 30 seconds on this question. So why should we as PCNs be really pushing to develop and grow our own talent? So taking on board students and apprenticeships, what are the benefits? Why should we be doing it? So Will, coming to you first of all.
So I think, and it goes back to, what do you want to be as PCNs, and what do you want your culture to be in the way that you work? So I think there's a few comments that we've had around, making sure that the existing teams have buy-in. So workforce development is not just about bringing in new people, it's about developing your whole workforce, and that includes people already have. So how you secure buy-in from your existing workforce, and your existing workforce feel invested in, and that doesn't need to mean that you send them on training courses or give them promotions, but just feel invested in that they're an important part of the conversation, an important part of the planning. And it goes back to that culture and recognizing that, you are going to be groups of people with lots of different cultures and lots of ways of doing things, and some people will be very protective over their ways of doing things, and we need to sort of not kind of blast through and say, this is the new plan, these are the new people. It is a balance, of course, because some people will be very happy in their role, some people will fear change, and how you bring people through change is really, really crucial at this time. And so how you invest in them might not just mean giving them new things to do, but how you grow them might be how you help invest and support them through the changing times, not just.
Brilliant. Trish, you've got 30 seconds. Why should we be investing in our own and growing our workforce?
We know that in some, I suppose, of our disciplines within our workforce, we've got an ageing population. For example, in nursing especially, we've been talking about that for many years now. It's not going away. And I know that increasingly there are practices struggling to recruit into nurses. So we do need to understand them, but I think that definitely we need to be investing in all types of workforce. It helps retain them. If we can have career ladders and career pathways, it will, encourage people to stay in primary care, grow, develop. And I think that it's a great time for apprenticeships as well to be introduced into primary care, because we can tap into apprenticeship levies, which effectively means that the training is free of charge for us. So yeah, it's really, really important to grow our own at this moment in time and think about all the ways that are available and speak to your training hubs to find out more.
Thanks, Trish. Becca, you've got 30 seconds.
Well, at the end of the day, if you invest in your own workforce, yes, you will recruit and retain, as Tricia said, so you'll save money, and also your workforce will be more efficient, and you'll have greater capacity because people will be able to do things independently and be empowered to take things on that they may not have done. So it's really important that you invest in your own talent, and you need to know who your rising stars are. Don't let them go. You've got to create an exciting environment for them to work in, and they will take work off you. They will make life easier if you let people grow beyond, with their potential. So it's a really important way of getting better efficiency, effectiveness, and cost effectiveness. And long term, it will save you a lot of time and energy.
Thanks, Becca, and thank you, panel. So after today's webinar, we're going to send out some slides and supporting information around training hubs, the workforce planning process itself. One of the biggest questions that we get asked time and time again is, where are we going to put all these extra staff? So there are some PCNs that are planning on bringing up to 70 new staff, 70 new staff in over the next 4 years. So if you're sat there thinking, where are we going to put these extra roles? Then you won't want to miss our next webinar, which focuses on estates and property management for PCNs. So that's going to be on the 11th of November. We'll send you a link out to that so you can register to watch back or watch live with us. And if you've got any questions, you can get in contact with us. Please feel free to email us at webinars@onemedicalgroup.co.uk, and we can put you in contact with any of our panel if you've got further questions. Thank you, panel. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for everyone that's been watching. I hope it's been helpful, and we'll see you in 3 weeks' time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Caroline.